Okay, so hopefully we've gone live now. And what I want to do today is just introduce one of many guys that I've met along my travels, and guys that have either inspired me or I've made a nice connection with. And Tommy's a really cool guy, fun guy. We had a good laugh over in Ibiza at Greenheart, and he's well into his health and fitness. And he saw my post recently about addiction, and sort of shared with me that he's had a few sort of troubles along his way, and getting over these addictions has been sort of like the method that he's been able to bring himself back to health and wellness. So Tom's going to share his story with us today and give us some insights into the 12-step process. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thanks for having me on this platform. It means a lot that what you just said there, and I'm excited to share some personal experience and a little bit of insight with you also at home watching this. If you have any issues with addictions or personality variances or individual quirks, that the doctor, I'll touch on that first. The doctor called it a personality variance when I went to see him about Messiah complex tendencies shortly after 2017 general election, and I was worried about my mental health. And when I heard him describe it as a personality variance, I thought, you know what, I'll take that. It's a soft way of describing it, because we've all got pretty variable personalities, and mine certainly tends towards addiction. And I still straddle that line between describing it as I have a close relationship with addiction and saying I'm an addict. So if I went to certain fellowship meetings, I may say, hi, my name's Tommy and I'm an addict. And people say, hello, Tommy. And it's actually quite comforting and quite empowering to acknowledge that word. But then there's other times when I'm doing more meditative stuff, more spiritual work, and I'm thinking like, Tommy Holgate's just a concept, addiction's just a concept. So, you know, the experience that this physical form is having of this reality on this frequency band at this time is just a result of responses to events that have occurred in the story of this life so far. So am I an addict, or is this simply how this assemblage point of consciousness is choosing to handle things at this point in the unfolding of the universe? So that might sound like a little bit mysterious.
Wow.
Because by the same token, having said all that, it could just be like, yeah, I'm an addict. You know, I'm one of the 1 in 10 that is an addict. And you know, I was addicted to crumpets when I was 12. I would have 12 crumpets a day. That's when it started. That's when I started to slide off the wagon. And I remember I had 4 for breakfast, 4 when I got home before my mum got home, and then 4 for supper. That was a bare minimum every day. And we got a new fridge freezer. And I said to mum, rather than throw the old one away, let's put it in the garage so we can fill it with crumpets. So there was a freezer full of crumpets for my teenage self. And I realised that crumpets weren't necessarily working. So then moved on to instant noodles and then rice pudding before discovering the Atkins diet then. So, but like even then, I remember like it was a way of distracting somehow, or kind of avoiding some deeper rooted sense of mild emptiness. I don't want to make it sound too dramatic. Russell Brand describes it greatly as well. Says, you know, it's like trying to fill a hole from when you're younger. And mine began, if we were to rewind to roughly the beginning of where this addiction started to become manifested, or the seeds were sown. Mine started, and I pinpointed it through a lot of shadow work and through counseling style conversations and life coaching exercises and whatnot. It started in the Catholic Church as an altar boy, seeing hundreds of people in the congregation and seeing my mum coming up to do that, to get a blessing from the priest instead of the body of Christ. So everyone else was getting like the body of Jesus, but mum was just getting that from the priest. So I said to her, why don't you get the body of Christ? And she said, because at that point she'd split from my father as I was quite young, and we were the only family in the Catholic community in that situation. She said, well, because I'm not with your father anymore, I'm not a good woman in the eyes of God. So that, as a young boy, when you're sort of 7 or 8, still formulating your opinion about the world and about yourself, makes you think, blimey, God doesn't like my mum. And the term broken homes there, and like, it's a broken home, you know, broken boy, which kind of sounds dramatic and a bit like violin. So I want to put the violins away and sort of clarify that I was very lucky to receive a lot of love from all areas of the family. But there was this slightly erroneous belief implanted age 7 or 8 that I kind of wasn't good enough for God. And when you're told that God created the world, that instills somewhat of, of an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
And so I had this like overly strong desire to achieve something massive in order to counterbalance the inferiority element of my self-belief. So that's where this desire to kind of save the world came from. I was like, right, I'm going to achieve something so massive that no God can ever tell me I'm not good enough. And the pressure to try and save the world is what would be a large part of my motivation for drinking so much in the early stages, age 17, 18, 19, because when I was blackout drunk, I wasn't planning how to save the planet. So that certainly fanned the flame, you know, that those memories of being young, which contributed to the feeling of pressure. And I remember a quote from Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors, talking about drinking. And he had a saying where he said, it's like gambling somehow. You go for a night drinking and you don't know where you're going to end up the next day, which I had on my wall as a mantra. So I'd get blackout drunk, see what happened, and wake up sometimes in the gutter, in fields, playgrounds, on top of like local mechanics, sometimes in a police cell, you know, quite often outdoors, still fully clothed, usually without my cash card or phone. But there was this arrogance, I think, with sense of purpose, where I thought, I just can't die. So I'd be like getting blackout drunk, smashing my head to bits, and then waking up the next day feeling roughly all right. And that was the story really from age 18 till about 26. Always just getting blackout drunk, never causing anyone any great harm. And people were often telling me like it was so funny what I was doing, or I'd hear like about how I was making people laugh, or, you know, Paul and Sandra really loved you last night. And I'd think, who are Paul and Sandra? Sometimes I could have met people 5 or 6 times and not remember who they were.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I think I think that's a strategy that a lot of people, particularly young boys, use, and I can totally relate to that. You know, I was the class clown that wanted to entertain everybody and just get as much attention as possible. And I think when you've got this addictive mindset and this hole that needs filling, it's a really great way to sort of get lots of acknowledgement and sort of feel loved and feel noticed. And you know, I think it's a poison that a lot of people don't necessarily get over, and they just take that addiction to their grave. So I'm interested because you told me about the 12-step process, and I know that we've both done a lot of work on ourselves. I haven't been involved in the 12-step process, but I'm really interested, and I'm sure some of the viewers that don't know about it, if you could just give us a few ideas about it.
Certainly. Well, the 12 steps is a program of recovery, usually associated with AA, but it is relevant in all sort of addiction circles, really. Again, Russell Brand, in his book Recovery, essentially puts forward this 12 steps, saying it's applicable to anyone. It could be applicable to you if you're drinking too much coffee, eating too much chocolate, or just have thoughts that you don't want to be thinking anymore, that are not conducive to productivity in your life. And I saw them on the wall. I'm going to rattle through them and then I'll explain a bit more about each one. So first one is, we admitted to we were powerless over alcohol or our substance, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand it. 4, make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admit to our higher power, to ourselves and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, become entirely ready for God of our understanding to remove these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him or her to remove our shortcomings. 8, we make a list of all the people we've harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Nearly there. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admitted it. I've just finished number 10, by the way, now, so I'm moving into step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the Creator as we understand it, praying, wishing for knowledge of his or her will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, finally, having had a sense of awakening as a result of engaging in this process, we carry this message to fellow alcoholics or addicts and recommend that they practice, and also we practice these principles in all our affairs. So that's the 12 steps for you.
Wow. Yeah.
So
It's very much a spiritual path, isn't it? It's very much about sort of beginning to understand yourself, all your flaws, and then correcting them, but not just correcting them for yourselves, possibly correcting them for the betterment of other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
For the
I
betterment.
love it. And that's the first time I've heard those 12 steps. That's the first time.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about them. So and it's really nice because I've been doing, all sorts of work as you have, and they're pretty much aligned with some of my personal values. So that's really great. Makes me feel good about that. Yeah, great. So from doing those steps, how would you say your life's changed recently, and what's been the turnaround for you?
Okay, well, the key things from the steps, I would say, there's a humility that comes with step 1. So admitting about the powerlessness over alcohol, because I had a bit of a wobble 6 months ago where I thought I could handle a bit of rum one night. Then 5 days later, I was, 3 bottles of whiskey in and being sick on the floor. And I had to hold my hands up and go, you know what? I'm powerless. Like, Tommy Holgate does exist, and, you cannot handle one drink. So the surrender, the empowerment that came with the surrender was good. And that's a realization I hadn't had. So surrendering is empowering. That's a top line that I would say there. Turning our lives over to the care of God or creation as we understand it. I believe that creation wants to see humans thrive. And whatever that invisible source of electricity is that's keeping our heart beating, wants to see you and I and everybody watching have a healthy body and a happy mind. So if I turn my life over to that, that's not giving away control. That's asking for more direction to achieve the purpose that I think I'm here for. So it's empowering, in answer to your question, certainly. Number 4, this fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves, where you write down all your resentments and you forgive the people. You write down how it made you feel and what your part is to play in it. The realization I had from that is almost always my resentment comes from a sense of imposing my belief on somebody of how they should behave, and then them not meeting my expectation of that. So it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is scrutinize almost every situation. I've imposed a belief on that person, and then they've not met my expectation. It's not their fault. And I've got the power to then relinquish attachment to that belief, leave the expectation behind, surrender to this higher power, and it becomes like a yoga, just a sense of going with the flow. I know it's a cliche, but literally letting that be the case. It's empowering also to speak out loud and admit the things that we're ashamed of. That's step 5, admitting our wrongs. And we do that with the sponsor, so they're not going to judge you. It's someone else in the program. But it doesn't have to be somebody in a program. It can be someone that you trust or that you would like to talk to. Another key thing with these steps that I've heard through the meetings is step 8, made a list of all the persons we've harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. It doesn't mean that we have to go and make amends to everyone, but becoming willing energetically and karmically brings about a big shift in your own experience of physical reality. If we're not willing to make amends, so if I'm still saying, yeah, but she did that, 15 years ago, I know I was wrong, but she did that. This idea of, but they did this. If we just let that go and just become willing, so the but they did can go, and I'm willing, it's a massive shift. And the making direct amends to people has been powerful. I'm still finishing step 9. I'm on step 11, but step 9 takes a bit of time. Basically means for me ringing up a load of old mates and family and just saying sorry for any times that my drinking caused trouble. Because I'm a nice guy and I never hurt anyone, they're all saying, well, no apology necessary. But then they'll say, I know it's not necessary, but I want you to know that I'm no longer a person who would think that that sort of behavior is acceptable. And for them to know that this change has occurred is important on the process of recovery, and also for them, it invariably makes them feel better because they go, yeah, you don't need to say sorry, but actually, thanks. It's great to see that you're in this position now, and I acknowledge that you've done some work on yourself. So,
nice.
In a nutshell, answer to your question, it's empowering the surrender. It builds faith to think, you know what, I don't have to be in control. If I surrender, then the guidance that's coming through is going to want me to be happy. So it's going to want me to not hold on to resentment. I can let go of the resentment by let go of imposing belief and expectations, and judge myself less, forgive myself more, and do this on a daily basis. So just keep checking in. If I feel a bit off on a day, I can quickly go, okay, what have they done? How's it made me feel? Forgive them. They don't have to be sorry for me to forgive them. So forgive it. Don't impose, don't judge, and then look at my own part to play and let things go. So, but it is a bit of work. They call it working the steps for a reason, but it's like going to the gym. You start off with 5 kilograms, you work up to 10, work up to 15, and before you know it, you're doing more than you could have imagined. So it's been a great process, and I hope that anyone watching this, whatever problems you might be having, you can just, through the power of your own mind and directing thoughts in a certain way, achieve states of happiness that don't necessarily have to be cosmic bliss, but it can just mean feeling all right, feeling good day to day, and going to sleep without a guilty conscience or without ruminating and overthinking, and to have a pretty good day most days and know that that's fine.
Great. Tom, that's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. Brilliant. I've been engrossed listening to you. So I don't care if anybody else doesn't listen to this. I've learned a lot from you this morning, and I've really enjoyed touching base with you. And we had a really good time over when we were at Greenheart. And hopefully, I'm going to come over to Thailand and sort of say hello and have a look at your new space that you're working in.
Oh, you'd be very welcome here, Glenn.
Yeah. Cool. You take care, yeah?
Nice one, mate.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.